There are some things a woman knows before she is ready to admit them. The weight of a secret sits differently than the weight of a lie, and, after 7 years of marriage, Isla Beaumont had learned to tell the difference. She knew on a Tuesday in March, which is the cruelest kind of day to have your life quietly begin to end. Not a dramatic Friday night, not a Sunday with too much wine and too much silence. A Tuesday when she was sorting laundry and found a receipt tucked into the breast pocket of Rowan's blue blazer, the one he wore to what he called late client dinners. The receipt was from a restaurant on St. Denis Street in Montreal, a table for two, a bottle of Bordeaux at $180, and the date, March 4th. The same night he had texted her a photo of a sad desk salad and written, "Stuck at the office again. Don't wait up." Isla stood in the laundry room for a long time. The receipt was light in her hand, the paper soft from being folded and unfolded. She didn't cry. She felt something colder than tears, a clarity, sharp as the first frost of October. She put the receipt back exactly where she found it. She folded the blazer. She set it on the pile for dry cleaning. Then she went back to the kitchen and finished making dinner. And when Rowan came home that evening smelling of someone else's perfume and his own comfortable guilt, she handed him a plate and asked how his day had been. He said fine. She said that was good. She smiled. She always had the kind of smile that people called warm. That night, while he slept, Isla Beaumont began to plan. To understand what came next, you have to understand who Isla was before she became someone's wife. Before the condo in Westmount, before the dinner parties and the hyphenated identity that slowly, without her noticing, replaced her own. She had grown up in Cape Breton, the second daughter of a contractor and a paralegal, who taught her that paperwork was power and that a handshake was only worth the character of the hand offering it. She had studied finance at Dalhousie, moved to Montreal at 24 and built a quiet career in commercial real estate that Rowan had always described to friends as her little side thing. Not dismissively, exactly, just casually, the way you dismiss a table lamp, functional, forgettable. What Rowan never considered, because it required a degree of curiosity about another person he had simply stopped bothering to develop, was that Isla had spent 6 years building relationships with every property broker, notary, and commercial lender between Old Montreal and the Plateau. She knew which buildings were quietly listed, which sellers were motivated, and which bank managers owed her coffee. He thought she was just the woman who kept the house running. He had no idea what she was capable of running. The weeks after the receipt were outwardly ordinary. Isla cooked. She attended Rowan's firm's spring fundraiser in a green dress and chatted with his partner's wives about renovation projects and private schools. And nobody noticed that she was memorizing everything. She watched the joint accounts. She documented deposits and withdrawals, noting the $600 cash that disappeared every second Saturday with the reliability of a utility bill. She found the hotel app on his tablet, the bookings he had never bothered to delete. She photographed everything with the methodical calm of someone who had grown up watching a paralegal mother build court files at the kitchen table. She did not confront him. Confrontation is for people who want to be talked out of what they already know. Instead, she called her mother's old contact at a notary firm in Verdun. She restructured the trust her grandmother had left her, quietly and legally, in a way that placed it outside the scope of the marital estate. She spoke to a family lawyer, not the one their friends recommended, but a woman named Daisy who operated out of a small office in NDG, and had a reputation for not losing. Daisy reviewed the domestic contract they had signed when they bought the condo. She looked at the fidelity clause Rowan had insisted on, laughing as he signed it, saying, "I'll never need to worry about this." "He signed this himself?" Daisy asked, her pen hovering. "He was pouring scotch for my father at the time," Isla said. "He didn't read it." Daisy smiled the way lawyers smile when the paperwork is already doing the work for them. The condo was listed on a Thursday. Not publicly, Isla knew better than that. A pocket listing, shared discreetly with 2 buyers she had cultivated over 3 years. A developer from Laval who had been eyeing Westmount inventory, and a Montreal physician relocating from Toronto who needed to close before June. The physician made a clean offer by Friday afternoon. Cash, no conditions, closing in 30 days. Isla accepted it via DocuSign at 11:43 on a Friday night while Rowan slept 8 feet away. She was efficient. She had always been efficient, but Rowan had always described that quality as her being type A, as though competence in a woman were a personality quirk rather than a skill. The moving company came on the 1st of May, a Wednesday. Rowan had told her that week he was flying to Vancouver for a conference. She had checked and there was no conference, but she said nothing, just kissed him at the door and watched his cab pull away. Then she made 1 phone call and 3 moving trucks arrived before 8 a.m. Her sister, Fiona, was there. Fiona, who had never liked Rowan, Stu had said at the wedding reception that he looked at Isla the way people look at real estate. Appreciatively, but always calculating the resale. Fiona directed the movers through the condo with the energy of someone who had been waiting 4 years for this exact morning. Living room to truck 1, she said, clipboard in hand. His office goes to the donation bin, except the MacBook. That's evidence. By 2 in the afternoon, the condo was an echo chamber. The furniture was gone. The art Isla had chosen piece by piece over the years was wrapped in moving blankets and loaded safely. His things, the golf clubs, the expensive espresso machine he had bought without asking, the suits he had organized by color, were boxed and stacked neatly by the door for him to collect. She was not cruel, she was clear. The locksmith came at 3. Isla looked around the empty condo one last time. It smelled like fresh paint and possibility. She picked up her bag, picked up the folder of documents a days had prepared, and walked out into the May afternoon. Her phone buzzed as she got into her sister's car. A text from Rowan. Landing in van. Hotel's nice, miss you. She read it. She put the phone face down on her knee. She watched the city pass through the window and felt, with enormous surprise, that the ache she expected to feel was quiet, smaller than she'd thought, like a tooth you've been dreading pulling that turns out to hurt less than the anticipation. She did not reply. Somewhere over the Rockies, Rowan Kilpatrick was sipping a complimentary scotch, and believing he had a very good life. He would land on Thursday morning to find that his key card for the condo no longer worked. He would stand in the lobby of their building with his roller bag and his conference lanyard, pressing the buzzer repeatedly, until the building superintendent came down, and, with the particular discomfort of a man delivering bad news, told him that the unit had been sold, and the previous owner had vacated. Rowan had what people politely call a scene in the lobby. The superintendent remembered it clearly for months afterward. He called Isla. The number connected but rang out to a message, a recorded voice telling him that the voicemail had not been set up. He called again, same. He called Fiona, who answered on the second ring. She's fine, Fiona said. She said to tell you that the paperwork is being couriered to your parents' address in Pointe Claire, because that's the only property you're confirmed to have access to right now. Fiona, where is she? What is happening? What's happening? Fiona said pleasantly. Is that Isla read the postnuptial agreement? Goodbye, Rowan. The line went dead. He stood on the sidewalk outside the building and tried for the first time in 4 years to think about what Isla actually knew. He had always assumed the answer was not much. He had underestimated her so completely and for so long that it had ceased to feel like underestimation and had started to feel like fact. He drove his rental car to his bank branch on St. Catherine. He sat across from the advisor and asked to access the joint savings. The advisor was a young man who had the specific expression of someone trying to deliver information without taking any responsibility for it. There's a hold on the joint account pending a court application, the young man said, and the balance on the joint checking is, he typed. He looked at the screen. $42. $42, Rowan repeated, and some sense. Yes. The business account for Kilpatrick and Associates Consulting had been in the corporate name, but the corporate structure, which Isla had helped set up, because Rowan had trusted her to handle the paperwork he found boring, was registered under a numbered holding company, a holding company that a Daisy had spent 2 weeks reviewing, and that under the domestic contract's asset disclosure clause, had been fully captured in the settlement trigger. The account was frozen. Rowan sat in the parking garage outside the bank for 40 minutes. Then he called the woman he had been seeing for 14 months. Her name was Chloe and she worked in brand consulting and she had told him many times that she didn't do complicated. Hey, she said, answering. Her voice had the slightly cautious energy of someone who has not yet decided how a call is going to go. Isla knows, Rowan said. She's gone. The condo's sold, the accounts are frozen. I don't have anywhere to stay right now, so I was thinking I could come to yours for a few days, just while I get a lawyer and Rowan. Chloe's voice was very calm. The accounts are frozen, yes, but that's temporary. The lawyers will, like all of them? It's a legal hold, it's not? Okay, she said. I'm going to need some space to process this. Chloe, I need somewhere to. I'll call you, she said and ended the call. He looked at his phone. He looked at the concrete pillar in front of his car. He thought about how Chloe had once told him over dinner that she admired how together his life was. How solid. He had liked that very much. His life had been together because Isla had been holding it together. He understood this now with the particular clarity that arrives too late. His law school friend Pascal let him stay on his couch in Rosemont for 2 weeks. Pascal's apartment smelled of cat and old takeout boxes and it had one bathroom that 4 people shared. And Rowan had never in his adult life felt more keenly the distance between who he believed himself to be and where he was actually sleeping. He hired a lawyer on the 5th day, a sharp man named Bernard who wore good shoes and spoke quickly. Bernard reviewed the domestic contract and went quiet in a way that told Rowan, before any words were exchanged, that the news was not good. "She triggered the clause cleanly," Bernard said. "The fidelity provision is airtight. You signed it. The evidence she submitted, hotel records, credit card statements, photographs, it's substantial." He set his glasses on the desk. "She didn't miss anything, Rowan. I want the condo contested. She sold marital property. The condo was titled in her name as the primary holder, which you agreed to when you incorporated the holding company for your business. That was the trade-off. She gets title, you get corporate liability protection." Bernard looked at him steadily. It was actually a very good structure. For her. Rowan stared at him. "She planned this, based on what I'm reading," Bernard said carefully. "I think she planned this very thoroughly, and very patiently." Rowan left the office and sat in his rental car. He was still paying for the rental car because he had no other car because the lease on the Audi was in the company name, and the company account was frozen. And tried to remember the last time he had asked Isla about her day and actually listened to the answer. He could not remember. He drove to Westmount. He parked across from the building where they had lived. A light was on in what had been their condo. New owners already. Through the window he could see the warm rectangle of someone else's lamp in someone else's evening. He didn't know where Isla was. He didn't know where to start looking. He realized, sitting in the car in the dark, that he didn't actually know very much about Isla at all. Her routines, her friends outside of their shared social circle, the cousin she sometimes mentioned who lived out west. He had occupied the same space as a woman for 7 years, and had somehow managed to know almost nothing about the interior of her life. He started driving. He wasn't sure where he was going. 3 months passed. The legal process was slow and grinding, and Bernard was expensive, and Pascal eventually, with some guilt but firm resolution, told Rowan he needed his couch back. Rowan moved into a furnished studio in Verdun. It was the size of a generous parking space. The radiator made a sound like someone arguing in the walls. Rowan took on contract work. A former colleague needed someone to review commercial proposals, paying $40 an hour, which was the kind of money Rowan had once spent on a bottle of wine without checking the price. He worked at a folding table. He learned to cook pasta in a pot that came with the furnished unit and had clearly been used hard. He was not broken by this. He was, against his expectation, clarified. The anger that had carried him through the first weeks, the indignant, entitled rage of a man who had decided he had been wronged, burned out somewhere around week 6. What replaced it was quieter and harder to sit with. It was accountability, not the performed kind. The real kind, that arrives at 2 a.m. and doesn't come with an audience. He thought about the Tuesday nights he had told Isla he was working late. He thought about the fundraiser, where he had spent the whole evening talking to the partners and had not once introduced her to anyone as anything except my wife. He thought about the time she had been offered a position at a commercial property firm in Toronto, a significant step, and he had said that the timing was complicated. They were just settling in, maybe next year. He said it gently. She had believed him, or she had been kind enough to let him think she did. He thought about their last anniversary. He had made a reservation at a restaurant she had mentioned twice, which he had at the time congratulated himself for remembering. He had not remembered the thing she mentioned before it, that her grandmother's death anniversary fell the same week, and that she always found the month of October hard. He had given a toast. He had been charming. He had not asked how she was. The studio in Verdun had a narrow window that looked out onto an alley. Rowan spent a lot of evenings at that window. He was not looking for Isla. Bernard had advised him, clearly, that contact attempts would constitute harassment given the civil proceedings. Beyond that, and this took longer to arrive at, this understanding, he did not think he had the right to pursue her. She had not hidden from him because she was being irrational. She had built a door and walked through it. Chasing her through it would make him something he did not want to be. It was Pascal who told him, several months later, that Isla had been seen at an industry event, that she was doing well, that she had apparently partnered with a commercial property firm downtown and was heading a new residential commercial development portfolio. She looked happy, Pascal said carefully, watching Rowan's face. Good, Rowan said. He meant it. That surprised him. The final chapter of the story of Rowan Kilpatrick did not arrive dramatically. There was no confrontation in a parking lot, no scene in a courthouse. It arrived in an envelope couriered to his Verdun studio on a Thursday afternoon in October from a Daisy's office. Inside was the finalized divorce certificate, and a single additional document that Adaze had included with a brief handwritten note. Isla asked that you receive this directly rather than through Bernard. She felt it was important that you know. It was a medical record, his own, from a fertility clinic they had visited 3 years into the marriage, when they had briefly and cautiously discussed the possibility of children. He remembered the appointment. He remembered the doctor saying, "Everything looked generally fine, just give it time." He remembered feeling relieved and then not thinking about it again. What he had not known, what he had not been told, because the conversation had happened with Isla privately, in a follow-up appointment he had not attended, was that the full results had been more complicated. The clinic had found a hormonal irregularity. The doctor had told Isla that a biological pregnancy was extremely unlikely, almost certainly impossible without significant intervention. Rowan read the document twice. The words rearranged themselves slowly into their meaning. Isla had known, for 3 years, that a pregnancy was essentially not possible. She had never told him, not because she wanted to deceive him, but because, and this was in a letter, 3 pages in Isla's handwriting, folded into the envelope beneath the medical record. She had known what the information would do to him. "You have a very specific idea of yourself," she had written, "and I watched, over years, how you managed information that threatened that idea. You rewrote it, you minimized it. I knew that if I told you, you would find a way to make it about your own loss, and I would spend the next decade managing your grief about a thing I was already grieving alone. So I carried it. I told myself the marriage was enough. I told myself I was enough for you. And then I found the receipt in your jacket. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you because you spent 7 years in a house with a woman you didn't see. And I think you deserve to finally understand what you were standing next to. I don't hate you, Rowan. I think you're a person who has lived entirely on the surface of things. I think that's a loss you won't fully understand until you have nothing to stand on but what's underneath. I hope you find something solid there. I mean that." Rowan set the letter on the folding table. He sat with it for a long time. Outside, the October alley was bare and gray and very quiet. He thought about the receipt in the blue blazer. He thought about the woman who had found it and folded it back, and put the blazer in the dry cleaning pile and gone to make dinner. He thought about what it cost to hold that much, that quietly, for that long. He understood now that the condo, the accounts, the career, none of it was what she had taken from him. What she had taken was the comfortable story he had been telling himself about who he was. And he thought, sitting at the folding table in the Verdun studio with October light going gray outside the narrow window, that losing that story was possibly the most necessary thing that had ever happened to him. It was not a pleasant thought, but it was an honest one. And for the first time in longer than he could recall, Rowan Kilpatrick sat with something true.